it is that you are in the world. I realize there are a lot of you that tune in from different parts of the globe. And I'm very excited about that part. And also that I have Purdeep, who is a guest on the Teresa Snyder Conscious Conversation show. And we're going to talk a little bit about, I definitely have a niche for helping females in business. And Purdeep has this strategic way of helping men. We're going to kind of talk about how we can help each other. So welcome. And Purdeep, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks, Teresa. I really appreciate the opportunity to have this awesome chat here. So my name is Purdeep Sangha. Obviously, I'm what they call a strategist for men in business. And I typically help guys in business really not only grow their business, but live happy and healthier lives when it comes to being the man that they want to be, being the father that they want to be, being the husband that they want to be.
Oh, I love that. I love it. And I love it when I hear men in particular talk about transparency or authenticity, integrity. You said being a good father, being a good husband. I like it when men can own that role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's big. I think it's actually something that's been lost, especially over the last decade. And especially, it's interesting that I see that I obviously I live in Canada and I kind of laugh sometimes with the US politics, but it just seems that the leadership right now that we see in a lot of cases from many men is really lacking. And so the family unit per se, there's a lot of stats to show that, family units are dwindling, divorce rates are skyrocketing, children, I think it's within the US, they were saying 52% of children are being raised without full-time fathers. Like I'm a total optimist, but I'm also a realist as well. And I'm a firm believer that there's things that need to be done here, especially when it comes to being a man and being a leader.
Wow. So what are some of the ways that, like, what is your business and how do you strategically help men in business, which I'm sure overflows and filters into other areas of their life?
Yeah, definitely. So my business, so I have a coaching and consulting firm. And so I work with entrepreneurs that range from anywhere that are, they have to have an established business, whether they've been a year in business for a year, anywhere from 50 plus years. So it's really helping guys. Typically the age range is between 30 to 60 years old. And they come to me for two specific reasons. One is they want to grow their business, so they want to make more money. Or the other reason is they've made their money, but they don't have the other parts of their life together. And so they've hit the success, you could say, check mark when it comes to money and business, but they're not feeling fulfilled in some way, shape, or form.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. And I would say also, like, I tend to niche with women that are 40, 50, that are kind of like they've had the hat of, being the mom, or they've had a career change, or they're wanting to get back into a career. And so that's kind of an interesting place, because I think that if we can, and ironically, I am single, yet I'm single and dating, that I want that kind of being close to 50 myself, but looking out into the world of men and entrepreneurial style men, that it's kind of an interesting discovery of finding that man that wants to have a little bit of both. Does that make sense? Like a home and business life.
Yeah, it's really a tough balancing act. And I think sometimes, guys don't like to admit it. That's really why I work with guys, is because guys are stubborn. But it truly is a tough balancing act when you're trying to grow a successful business and be the leader of a family as well. And so, there's that constant guilt trip that, okay, I'm not spending enough time with my family. But then when you're with your family, like, okay, I'm not spending enough time in my business. So I'm sure, women feel the same way as well. So, but for men specifically, there aren't that many resources, and the resources that we see out there, I believe, are steering a lot of men in the wrong direction. There's actually a movement that's being created. And so the movement that I have is really, it's called #MenWhoWin. And it's about helping men win in every aspect of their life. But traditionally, over the last 10 years, decade, we've seen with social media that there's been a lot of push when it comes to entrepreneurs, when it comes to hustle, grind, push. And a lot of people are getting burnt out. A lot of people are having more anxiety. And a lot of men are suffering, but they won't admit that they're suffering.
100%. I truly believe that. And it's, again, because I've been in mixed company, even kind of sort of dating and sorting that out and us knowing our place. And I would even honestly admit that women, we have challenged men, and we have, and I'll even speak for myself, that a couple of years ago, I was like, yeah, I want to be, the stronger role model for the female population. Yet I forgot to allow the men to have their place. Let me be feminine and let them invite me on a date, kind of that courting and that thing, because I love how you said that. A lot of times men are at work stressed about how are they going to pay for a date or accommodate and pay for their family. But then they get on the date or with their family and they don't have that way to vent, to be honest.
Yeah. And I'm glad you just opened up Pandora's box there when you talked about the challenging, because that's the second reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because right now we have such a movement when it comes to there's this whole concept of toxic masculinity. And so men right now, there's more and more studies that have come out that show not only men, but women do not know what it's like or supposed to be in their particular role in terms of their gender. So we have men that do not know what it means to be a man in terms of their masculinity, how they're supposed to be in relationships, how they're supposed to treat people. Is it wrong to be too masculine? Right? So I get these questions all the time. And it's actually a really dire situation, because right now, and I'm glad you're helping women, because we can have an open conversation about this, is that, and again, this is about working together, the men and women in our lives, because it's impacting the social family unit. And right now we see these movements where men and women are bashing. And it's not healthy for anybody. And it's very evident. And it's very, honestly, I'm kind of as I mentioned, I'm a total optimist, but I also see and I follow trends in terms of what's happening. About 16 years ago, I broke up with 16 or 17, maybe even longer, with my high school sweetheart, and I was devastated. And I wanted to find out what makes a successful relationship versus an unsuccessful relationship. And I reached out to some of the top, you could say, relationship experts. And they said there's a trend happening in relationships and roles are changing. And you could see things shifting in both men and women. And they said, this is what's going to happen. And I'm like, no way, this is not going to happen. And it slowly started to happen. And now we're seeing that there's more confusion than anything when it comes to relationships. So we have women which have been empowered, and they should be empowered because they've been really mistreated over centuries and centuries. And then we have men now that don't feel like they are supposed to be empowered in a certain way. So now there's this whole shift in relationships, and it's really interesting, but it's also kind of scary, because then you add on things like technology.
Yes.
And you see people stuck on their smartphones. You go to a restaurant, you see couples not even interacting and they're on their smartphones. You see family units sitting there and the kids are on their smartphones and no one's interacting with each other. Right. So it's almost kind of like what I call the perfect storm. Something needs to happen. Something needs to shift to make society a healthier place, because I'm a firm believer, like, we're making progress in all these things and all these strides in all these directions, but I don't see people getting any happier. And I don't know about you, Teresa. I see people getting more and more miserable these days.
Yes, I agree. And, that's what's so beautiful about that. We're both taking personal experiences, and that we're being as forthcoming and saying, why not take a minute? Let's, 2 years ago, the Me Too came out, and there was this really brief moment that I was like, yeah, me too. I was, taken out of corporate America, and, I was harassed. No, it did not benefit the conversation at all. And I had to step back and say, whoa, how are we going to empower each other, work collectively? And earlier today, I interviewed a beautiful woman who was also talking about the epidemic with the teenagers. Social media, how many followers. We can definitely, I know for me, I don't know about others, is that I get quote unquote harassed, but I'm old enough to handle it. Like, they send me messages. Why are you dressed casual? Why did you wear your eyelashes? Why didn't you wear your eyelashes? They send it because it's so easy to say on social media. So back to you on workability, communication from your aspect.
Yeah, I think it needs to be a dialogue. And I think that's the work that I do specifically. The most important thing is just getting men to have that conversation because they don't want to have that conversation. And
No,
so,
because they're not trained or taught that it's okay. Like,
yes.
I'm from the South, and I talk about it a lot. People are like, "Man, you talk about your family heritage." Well, yeah, because I was raised on a farm. You pull yourself up by your bootstraps. A lot of morals and values, but also a lot of men not able to share.
Yeah, and I think that's the part. So I'm a firm believer, and this is part of my personal teachings, is what I call mindful alpha males, which you have to be an alpha male because you need to be a leader, right? Your family looks up to you, your kids look up to you. If you're an entrepreneur, your staff look up to you. So that part is absolutely critical. But then there's that mindfulness side, which a lot of people forget, for example. So you have to have both components. And I think this is something I learned from my dad because my dad passed away last year. And he passed away suddenly. And my dad was, you could say, one of the man's man, but he was also the most softest guy I ever knew, very loving person. And so he, his goal was to hit 65. And his goal was, because that was his milestone, he was an entrepreneur. He raised a happy, successful family. He did things like travel. He had the money. On paper, it looked great, but inside, you could just tell that he wasn't fulfilled.
Mm.
And he also suffered from alcoholism as well because he just didn't know how to have those conversations. So I learned a lot growing up with my dad. But the thing that really drives me now is seeing him because his milestone was to hit 65. He was 64 and a half when he suddenly passed away from a heart attack. And so that for me is something I see and I look at a lot of guys going down that same path and I don't want to see them suffer. I don't want to see them spend decades or even a year or a month
Mhm.
suffering in that from that perspective when they don't need to. Because I always look back and say, well, how would my dad's life have been different if he had a mentor like me or a coach like me? What could someone, not me necessarily, but what could someone in his life that could have directed him in certain aspects or just shown him some other insight have done for him?
Wow, that is so good. So good. And I want to acknowledge, I'm sorry for your loss also,
Yeah,
because
thank you.
that is a void and that you're using it to catapult. And I would be curious, how is it, and maybe it's one-on-one conversations. I don't know, but I'm asking you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in recovery myself. And when I go to some of the recovery meetings and hear men finally talk, it is amazing. It's like the bottled they need that permission.
Yes.
Now I'm on the healthy side of a lot of different things, like I was telling you, and wanting to work collectively and in balance. What would a session be like? I mean, does a man reach out to you? I'm curious, how does that work so that a man finally can go, wow, I got some relief. I was able to share. I was able to talk.
Yeah, there's two different types. So basically what I do is I do workshops as well. And typically we start with the business side, right? So we
Okay.
focus on the business side. And then what I show them is that they are their biggest asset, but also their biggest roadblock because a business cannot grow if the business owner is not in the place that he needs to be or she needs to be in order to grow that business. So the work that I do mainly, so here's the interesting, like I do business strategy and tactics. I could do that all day long. I could give someone the strategies, but if they're not in the place to actually execute, they're not going to deal well. And that's what I see a lot of guys doing because it keeps circling or spinning their wheels. And a lot of the times it's because of situations at home. So we will have open workshops and I'll do things like, hey guys, I'll just ask a simple example. When was the last time like you felt like you didn't make enough money? Or when was the last time that you felt like you wanted more passion in your relationship or more sex, for example, or you just didn't feel appreciated? And you'll see that 9 out of 10 guys will put up their hand. And so then we start that in itself opens up Pandora's box because when a guy sees another guy put up his hand,
Mhm.
it's permission, right?
Absolutely.
And so that in itself opens up. And then I am very open myself in terms of the challenges I face, the challenges I continue to face. And when they hear me opening up, then they're like, okay, here's a person in his position that's openly talking about his challenges, his fears, his pains, challenges in his relationship. If he can do it, I can do it. And
Ooh.
so that just slowly starts opening up the conversation. Plus, I'm also very direct in my approach. When I have someone, I don't do it so much in a workshop, but when I have someone on a one-on-one setting, it is like I will ask some very tough questions and tough questions that you can tell their gears are spinning,
Mhm.
but they don't want to answer it.
Yeah. Well, I think we're taught to kind of live in our misery, live private, hide out. We want to keep up with the Joneses per se.
Oh yeah.
I've always wondered, who are the Joneses?
That's a really good question.
Like, I've always wondered that. And I'm always thinking, I bet you and I don't know this, but I bet you they've got to be in so much credit card debt and literally a lot of anxiety because we're living up to these standards.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a show, and again, I was talking to Jenny, the person I interviewed this morning, and we had such an awesome conversation afterwards because me being a media host and a speaker, and I go to events and I can feel the energy of sometimes it's the whole event. Sometimes it's the minute they put a sizzle reel up with flashy cars and yachts, and that's where they go first. I have to go, because they may not want to get real in their presentation. What would you say about some of that?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of the flashy stuff flying around these days. And that's kind of my biggest pet peeves because it puts things not in perspective because there's a lot of people out there and I used to work in the banking sector when I was in the corporate world. So I've seen people's financial statements. I've seen that majority of people they're living a life above their means. And the number one reason why people go bankrupt is things like divorce, is things like overspending. So I've seen that. I'm not for that at all. Like, I don't mind if someone's proud of something and they put up a picture and say, you know what, after all this effort, I was able to purchase this. But to put up a picture of your Ferrari and say, hey, look, guys, you know what, if you buy my program, this is what you can do. That's a pet peeve of mine because we're so trained. And here's the biggest thing for me. This is my life mission, is helping guys be better leaders, because we have a lot of men right now running around like sheep, and they're getting led by men that are not the right leadership. And so they will follow anything. And so they're desperate. They're desperate to have leadership because now it's tough to be a man in terms of, okay, a man's not supposed to be that strong anymore. So now they're looking for that automatically. That's how men work. So now we have people that are very influential places that are saying, okay, you can get your fulfillment out of life by making tons of money, buying a big home, getting a Ferrari. So that's why I specifically work with guys that are more the family oriented type. And so I'm not looking for the young 20 bucks that are out there following specific people because it's all about the hustle and it's all about the grind, because they will learn at some point in time, right?
Exactly.
When they have a family, when they see those challenges and they finally say, and it's interesting. I met with a gentleman 2 weeks ago, 35 years old, multimillionaire, very successful man, had been an entrepreneur his entire life. And the interesting thing, he came to one of my workshops, which was about business growth. And the part that he really enjoyed the most was when I talked about family, when I talked about balance, when I talked about being, thinking, acting, and feeling like the man that you want to be. That's why he reached out to me after. He said, I have all the money in the world, but now I don't have that family life I want, right? I don't have that relationship with my wife that I want. So that's what's hitting me, because he's like, I have everything else, but I don't feel those emotions.
Wow, I love that. And it's so interesting that you say all this, because there's been a couple of men, Stephen Kuhn, Kuhn, and he lives in Hungary, but he's all about honesty, integrity, transparency. And what I've followed along with some of his stuff, James Jacoby is another one that wrote a book about integrity. I feel like these men like yourself are rising finally. Like you said, kind of the Pandora's box. And I'm so honestly relieved. I'm relieved that men have their place again. I'm relieved that as women, we can be feminine again, and we can work together, and we can offer solutions, and we can offer, how about go to the, making it up, pumpkin patch, or put away your cell phones and have a conversation around the dinner table. And because that's what I knew growing up. I really do have that from growing up. I just kind of went I went corporate. I married my career. I got into like that lifestyle for a while, and it did not serve me.
No, yeah, that's tough. I know what that's like. So it's interesting you say that, because those are the conversations that people are facing. I see a lot of so guys, for example, it's tough to be a father these days because, okay, do I buy my kid a cell phone? Do I not buy a kid? And I've made, like, even with my wife, her and I have some very open conversations. And I say, you need to put your phone away, for example. And then she'll challenge me. She'll be like, you need to put your phone away.
Absolutely.
But it's drawing those lines, especially as a man, to say, okay, this is the household. These are the values that we need to live by. Right. Yeah. And okay, there's times when, okay, we have to go over those values or change your values, whatever that is. But if it's not part of your core value, you have to stand up for yourself, because I see a lot of men not being the fathers that they want because they feel social pressure. Like, oh, okay, everybody else's, parents have bought them cell phones. Maybe I should too. No, if you inside feel, if that's part of your core value that you don't think it's right, don't do it just because everybody else is doing it. Right.
And I'm sure, again, just my friends that have kids, and again, my age range, a lot of women are raising their kids as a single mom.
Mm-hmm.
Then they have, like, for me, being single in the dating world, have a little bit of Disneyland dad, and that's because the men don't know what to do. And so I don't fault them. They're just like, I get them for the summer. I better do blah, blah, blah. And so it's like, how can we have these conversations? And also, I think, and I don't have an answer necessarily, but how can we open up and even say, golly, this is what's going on. How do we get back to that instinctual, some of those core values? And I don't know, do you know Lachelle Atkins?
No.
America's Supermom. She's watching. Patty Mays is watching. I don't know exactly who you might know. And then Carol's watching. So we have because it's my show, it happens to be quite a few female. So what would you say your advice is to the female when they're, like, working through this with their husband, their spouse, their boyfriend, or their friend?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, again, it's always a balance, and there's a natural balance for every single person and every single relationship. And I think that's the most important thing, because the things I might say might not resonate with certain couples. But I think for me, what I've seen is an imbalance in relationships where women are taking more of a stronger role, and where men are kind of saying, okay, it's not right to be as strong anymore. And so that's shifting. I get, just as interesting enough, Teresa, I get as much, or if not more, referrals from women than I do from men saying, please work with my husband. And so I think my message to the women, the female audience out there, is to allow men to be men. Yes. Right? Encourage them to be men, and understand that it's actually a tough time right now to be a man, because they don't fully understand. They don't have the leadership. But as long as you give them what they need, what they're asking for, a lot of times right now, guys don't know what they need. I think that's the biggest thing as well. And they don't know how to ask for it. So you might have to pry that out of them. And there's a natural balance, because as a man, as an energy, because I'm a very spiritual person, but I'm also, the things that I follow are also neuroscience based. That's been my hobby for the last 2 decades.
I love both of those. Yeah. I love, the neuroscience, the NLP side, and then the spiritual side. I love it.
Exactly. And it's all coming together, because science is actually proving a lot of the spirituality stuff that we're talking about. But the different energies, you talked about feminine, there's a masculine energy as well. Masculine energy is very strong. It's very still. It's very focused. Right? But it's also very bland and very boring. And so men need that variety from their women. They need that energy, that life from their women. And so when they have a woman that's more in the masculine state, they're not getting that life. They're not getting that energy. They're not getting what they need. It's like two opposite ends of the spectrum. To have a balanced life, you have to have both. And a man brings something and a woman brings something. And that's the same thing. And that's why I'm seeing a lot of women right now saying, please help my man, because they're not getting that solidness. They're not getting that leadership. They're not getting that firmness, like that when you come across a guy that has that thing about him, that's like, okay, this guy I can trust. This guy I can put my life in his hands. He will be with me for, death do us part. And I trust his judgment.
Wow.
Right? And that is the big thing that a lot of women are missing in their relationships as well.
Well, and love that. And I hear so much about, like, the commitment and the instincts. And again, because I've spent the last 2 years traveling and speaking, and, like, I'm trying to trust my instinct, but then my brain's telling me, no, you need 100,000 followers. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, and also the rise in the feminine, and I'm helping the feminine, but it's like, whoa. I say all that. So I was at an event not too terribly long ago, and friends were really encouraged me, go to dinner with one of the speakers. And I did, but I didn't feel right. And lo and behold, I figured out he was married.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, man, I'm seeing kind of that trend of these different men that like, ooh, and I'm not saying that, well, like I disagree with that, but I also think men are missing something, women are missing something, and this is where this dialogue comes in. And I know for me, even these past month or so, I've said again, I'm ready to start dating. Took some time off, ready to start dating. And so I'm curious, where would you suggest, maybe you have a suggestion, maybe you don't. What do you think men need from a woman, even if it's a date or a friend or a business partner?
What I'm seeing is just that femininity, that you could just say that grace, right?
And grace is my favorite word.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
grace, just that liveliness, that is what men need. Because especially if you're dating an entrepreneur or someone that's goal driven, that's the masculine force. What he's looking for is someone that, I see this happen though. He'll date sometimes that type of, you could say archetype will date a woman that has a strong force as well, but then it won't last because it becomes a competition at the beginning, and that's why it's exciting. But what they're looking for ultimately as men is someone that can bring them life and bring them grace and appreciate them. Right. And it's not like one is better than this is the one thing that gets me. Men are not better than women, and women aren't better than men. We need each other. We are a perfect match. That is the most important thing. And so without women, there is no life. But without men, there is no life either, because women need men just as much. So it's interesting to see the dynamics, but men need that. They need someone. And sometimes, I can honestly say men need that ego stroking as well. Like, okay, you're my man. You know what? Thank you for working your butt off for our family. All those late nights, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes they just need TLC. And they just, and on top of that, and I don't know what, in terms of rating the show is, but the intimacy piece is big for men. And a lot of women think it's just sex. It's not. It's a way for a man to feel the energy of a woman. That's what it is. A man that loves his woman or is in an intimate moment with his woman is literally embracing her energy. Wow. Is taking that on, because he does not have that. That's a point in his time where he wants that. He thrives for it, right? He desires it when he's at that stage. And women, you can recharge a man in an instant just by giving him that.
Yeah. Oh, I love everything you're saying. And I think and I'll say this to the women that are watching. I encourage all of you to really dote on your man, to encourage or compliment or thank, be grateful, And again, I love to study the love languages and personalities and different aspects, but I do agree. We need to have conversations about money, about sex. Those are the things that are not talked about. Then spirituality, a lot of times, is not talked about. These are the key components. So we just are getting started.
Yeah.
And it's like, so to wrap the show, because we're just getting started, but then of course it's kind of the end of the show. How would you like to close out? Yes, I know it's already gone by so fast. It's been such a great conversation. Like anything, if people can get a hold of you, people that you want to, kind of say, just anything.
Absolutely. So you can get a hold of me on any of the social media channels at Purdeep Sangha. But I think the most important thing here is this. I think we are really at a time within the next 5 years that I'm a firm believer that we need to do something both as men and women and coming together and having this conversation. Because regardless of our relationships, what's at stake here is our children.
Yes.
And the next generation. Because I laugh and I actually very directly say this as well. I think the people within our era or generation, not the kids that are being born today, are the last line of defense when it comes to values, when it comes to relationships, because we're not seeing that same level in younger children because of the external influences like social media, the lack of leadership out there. So let's have these conversations. Let's openly work together and know that it's not men versus women. It's women and men working together because we need each other. I love the women in my life because they just bring a different part of life to me. And without them, I would not be who I am today.
100%. And I love that. And I love working with men, women. It's more about that we collectively, I instinctively have a good feeling about what you're bringing to the table. So Lachelle asked, what is the key to get that balance for those who don't have it? Okay. And I'm not specifically sure, but you can maybe answer that.
Yeah, I think, if it would be in a relationship context or some other context, but the most important thing to realize is you need to know what balance kind of looks like for you. And most people don't do that. Most people don't look and say, okay, what do I want my relationship to really be like in terms of whether it's the specifics? Hey, look, I want evenings to myself, or I want one date night, or whatever that is. This is how I take a look at a relationship. It is similar to like running a business. You have to have a goal in place, and you're not totally regimented. That's not what I'm saying, but you need to have goals. You need to work together. You need to grow together. But most importantly is understand. The big thing that I would say when it comes to balance, and this is what I see missing for a lot of people, is the emotions. Everybody strives for things, right? And targets, but very few people talk about the emotions. So I always tell people to really write down the top 3 emotions that you want in your life, or top 3 to 5 at the max, and then work backwards and say, what kind of lifestyle will support that? What kind of relationship will support that? And what kind of career or business will support that? That's how you really take a look at the balance that you want, because every single thing we do, sorry, I'm rambling. I know that.
No, it's good. I was going to ask you what are your 3 values, and you may or may not want to share that.
Yeah,
we're going over, but I'm okay with it because it's such a good conversation.
Yeah, and so I'll just finish this one thought. And I'll tell you my three my emotions, but it's working backwards and saying because every single thing that we do is based on feelings and emotions. That's how we are designed as human beings. That's what spirituality is meant for. That's how our brain is designed. So we don't feel like I don't say I think love or I think hunger. I feel hunger. I feel love. That's how we have to live our life, is based around the emotions. So mine are joy, passion, and love. Those are the top 3 emotions that I consistently try to strive towards.
Yeah, those are so good. So good. And then I'm curious, is your wife, like, are y'all totally different person? Like sometimes spouses are polar opposites, and then sometimes, I don't know. And you may not want to say that either. I know I'm asking.
No, I'm totally an open book. So my wife and I we come from 2 totally different upbringings. So I grew up on an orchard. So I'm a farm boy at heart. My wife is a city girl. And so we just had this attraction. She's very feminine from her neutral state, you could say, her natural state. I'm more masculine, but I flex my feminine quite a bit as well. So she is a little gal, and she's very pretty, and she's very kind-hearted. She works for a hospital. She's a nurse practitioner. She helps people in the oncology ward. And she's actually you could see her. She's a fancy gal, so she brings out the opposite side of me. I'm very simple, as you could from a farm boy perspective. So she brings out, you could say, the more exquisite things in life for me, and I bring out the simplicity for her. So there is a balancing act. We are in a lot of ways polar opposites. So, and it's not always roses and fun all the time. We butt heads quite a bit. And so we have those conversations, but what we notice is a lot of the times they're based because we're not in our natural states. There's social influences that are happening, or things that we believe to be true. But when we put ourselves in a natural state, wow, there's that chemistry.
Wow, that is so good. Well, thank you. Thank you. And I definitely encourage, and I know even if you watch the replay, this is just such golden. I really encourage all of you ladies that are watching to share this with a friend, share this with a guy. Don't hesitate to let a guy know, hey, this is something you might want to listen to, and encourage them in a good way, not, I'm mad at you, honey. You didn't do the dishes, so watch this guy. It's not like that. I think we can encourage each other. And Lachelle says, love the transparent. I mean, you're getting tons of good good feedback from the people that are watching, and these are great people that are watching. So thank
Thank
you. I totally enjoyed it. And if there's any way we can collaborate again, if you ever need anything from my perspective on the female side or workability, or you want to be on the show again, that's just what it's all about, spreading the good news.
Yeah, thank you. And I truly appreciate this opportunity to have this conversation in front of your audience.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
thank you.
I really, really enjoyed it. And a lot of times I bring guests on based on my instinct. And I've been doing daily interviews for months now. And I've had some really great people. And so it's easy for me. Like I said, Stephen Kuhn, James Jacoby, it's easy for me to connect you guys and also to connect the women to you guys that, collectively we can win together. So,
Great.
yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Well, bye, everyone. Have a fantastic day. Go out and do something great today, and love on your spouse or your significant other, or just a guy in the grocery store or a woman in the grocery store. Make their day. Never know. All right. Bye-bye.